So if you've been part of the car community for any decent amount of time, I'm sure you've heard of this company called Hennessy. It's this small company that does these crazy cars with stupid amounts of horsepower and gives them all sorts of crazy names. They were also recently under a bunch of scrutiny, I guess, about their Venom, which was a modified Lotus Elise that set the top speed record, supposedly, arguably not, for fastest car produced. If you're a big internet nerd like me though, if you see those videos on Hennessy and you look at the comment sections about them, a lot of times you'll see people in the comment section talking about how John Hennessy, the owner and founder of Hennessy Performance Engineering, is a crook or a fraud or all sorts of other names like that. So I wanted to go through and look at all the evidence and everything and see if that's true, see if maybe he just had some bad business practices in the past or whatever. But yeah, let's take a look and examine the evidence. So let's step back to the beginning where Hennessy started. He really got his name famous out there back in the early 90s modifying Vipers, which was crazy because they were already super high horsepower and dangerous cars to drive. And he was pretty much just adding horsepower to them and giving the horsepower kits some crazy name like the Venom. He really made a big name for himself back in the 90s, taking his car to runway drags, that sort of thing, and driving them super fast. So when evidence came out in the early 2000s about Hennessy possibly doing some bad business practices or some sketchy dealings, it was in the early 2000s, around when the internet was really starting to take off. There was people saying he was taking customer cars, selling parts off of them, letting them sit without working on them, taking money from escrow accounts on certain cars and using them towards other projects, and plenty of other pretty much just shady practices that you wouldn't want to see at a shop building a car when you give them tons of money. Now, according to some of the people that have came out and talked against Hennessy in the past, typically this happened with people who shipped their cars there and not to the in-state customers. This is because the in-state customers, you know, the local guys could come up and they could actually see the work being done, so it's really hard to screw those people over, and it's easier to screw over the people that don't live close by and can't really do much about it if they're not there. So in that time period, he was actually sued a bunch of times and lost multiple times. By 2002, he had 4 court cases that he had already lost and still had 10 in progress. And actually, I found evidence of at least 20 or 25 court cases ranging from 96 to 2005. It's all public record, so you can go and look at that in the Texas judicial website or whatever. Some of the customers that have spoken publicly about it, one of them who sued him talked about a head and cam package that was never actually done on the car. Another customer spoke about his car being damaged on a dyno when Hennessy decided to do some nitrous experimentation on the car without his consent. The car blew a couple of rods and damaged and pretty much threw the rods through the side of the engine, so that's pretty awesome. There was another customer who paid for a cylinder head to get some brand new valves put in it, as well as a new cam, and when he received it, the cylinder head had used valves in it. The cam was an OEM Chrysler cam. When he confronted Hennessy about it, it was a whole back and forth. It took 9 months to get a refund, and it wasn't even from Hennessy. He actually had to get the charges given back to him from his credit card company. And there are plenty of other stories online of people ordering parts back then and never receiving them, and then it being a month-long issue of getting a refund for those parts, and pretty much just fighting with Hennessy the whole time. So this is all pretty much public knowledge, and John has talked about it over and over again, talked about how yes, he practiced business badly back in these years. He claims that the business grew too fast, he took on more work than he could handle, and because of that he missed deadlines and that sort of thing. I know in only one court case he had to pay out over $130,000 to the customer, so you'd think he would want to turn around those bad business practices so that stuff like that would not happen again and he could keep his company running. In a 2002 interview with Car and Driver, he said, "Generally, now we're not scheduling the work into the shop until we have all parts ready for the car. That way, the car only comes into our shop when the work is being performed. Ultimately, the best PR for me is delivering a car that performs, and then the customer goes out and tells everybody he's happy with it. So it seems like they're on the up and up at this point, right? He's admitting to the problems that his company has been facing. Obviously, he's losing court cases. You'd think he'd want to change stuff around so that he doesn't run this company straight into the ground. Jump to 2006, John Hennessy is on some online forums. He's very outspoken on these public message boards. He essentially admits that it was mismanaged and that people are holding on to their grudges from the 98 through 2002 era where they did bad business practices, and that you shouldn't hold on to stuff in the past when he's changed. However, from the messages that I'll put up here now, it looks like his bad management is sort of still there, just considering those are some of the most unprofessional statements I've ever seen from the owner of such a large company. Okay, so what about today? All that happened in the past. Why are people still claiming that he's a crook or a fraud or whatever? Why do you still see that in the comment section of all of the videos about him that aren't on his channel? Well, there's a couple of things that he's done that are maybe immoral, I guess you could say, but not technically illegal or that crazy. So for example, one time he had posted on his Facebook page about tuning a AMG GT. This was just within the past couple of years, claiming that he was doing this in-house, implying that he was doing this in-house, when actually it was a shop called Eurocharge that he was outsourcing all the work to. Whatever. Another thing that people didn't really like recently is he had a package for the CTS-V, which was a twin turbo package instead of the factory supercharger, made 1,000 horsepower, which he was charging $195,000 for. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Which, whatever, you can say he offered a warranty, but I don't give a shit. That is, I'll buy 3 CTS-Vs and make them all 1,000 horsepower and still have cash to blow. That's just whatever though. That's just, if someone's willing to spend it, then they're willing to spend it. There's nothing wrong with that, I guess. Another thing that people were really upset about is recently he toted around his 2015 Mustang that he had his Hennessy supercharger bolted onto, when in reality it was a Whipple supercharger with a Hennessy badge over the top. So people don't like that he's taking credit for other companies' work and then sort of just doubling the price and offering a warranty. Again, maybe a little bit immoral, but not technically illegal. Now, I really understand the whole idea of paying more and then getting a warranty. That's a big deal. Having a warranty on these crazy 700, 800 horsepower cars is awesome. And a lot of the warranties that Hennessy offers are pretty awesome, like 2 years, 24,000 miles, 3 years, 36,000 miles, stuff like that, which is pretty unheard of for cars that have this amount of power. However, if you look at his Better Business Bureau account as well as his Yelp account, there are some things that are a little bit questionable on those. He currently has a D- with the Better Business Bureau, which is just absolutely horrid. Pretty much all you have to do to have an A is respond to all the complaints. And most of the complaints that are there are from reliability issues and those issues not being taken care of by warranty. There are also complaints on there that talk about him taking months and months and months longer than they were originally quoted for a project, which I totally understand with projects taking longer than original schedule, but whenever it's a 2-month project turning into a 9-month project, I think there's something weird going on there and they're probably not working on the car at all. Now, his Yelp account actually doesn't have that bad of a star rate. If you looked at it and just glanced at it, it really looks pretty reasonable. However, almost all the 5-star reviews on there are from people who just went and took a tour at his facility. They didn't actually get any work done. All of the low-star reviews are from people who got work done and had problems with either his warranty or with taking too much time, the same issues that he had in the past. So in 2016, Jason Torchinsky from Jalopnik wrote a whole article about Hennessy. He had a guy named Ahmad Ali from Qatar who came forward to him and wanted to expose Hennessy about his practices that he was doing to this guy Ahmad. So Ahmad had put down in 2013 $75,000 for Hennessy to purchase a C7 Corvette. At the time it was a brand new car, and put one of their packages on the car and then ship it to him. Well, Hennessy claimed sometime 2014, 2015, that they were having trouble getting the car just because it's a new car. They couldn't source one from a dealer or whatever. So Ahmad requested that he got a refund so that he could purchase one in Qatar where they were available, ship it to Hennessy, and have them do the modifications. Well, 3 years after he put down that $75,000 payment, he still hadn't received any refund, and that's why he went to Jason Torchinsky, is to try to get, some publicity out there and maybe get his money back. So again, we see John Hennessy doing the same bad business practices of screwing people that are not local to him, while most likely taking care of the people that can actually come and bother him in person. So in that same article on Jalopnik, Jason actually got in contact with some ex-employees at Hennessy, which corroborated old stories claiming that Hennessy would take parts off of cars, sell them without the owner's consent, have cars just sitting under tarps not being worked on. They actually told the story that whenever customers would call and complain and threaten to take their cars back from Hennessy, they would take the engine out of the car so that they could send pictures to the customer to claim that they were working on the car, when really they just took the engine out and didn't do anything to it. But it also made it harder for the customer to come take their car, because now they don't have a running and driving car sitting there. It's an engine and a rolling chassis. He also claimed that a lot of Hennessy was using off-the-shelf parts from other companies, parts that were not as quality as they should have been, especially for the money that they were paying, which people who are buying these services probably wouldn't know, because that's why they're sending it to a place like Hennessy and not doing themselves, or to having a local tuner shop take care of it for them. In a podcast with Matt Farah on the Smoking Tire podcast just a couple of years back when John Hennessy was on it, he said some interesting stuff, talking about how he admits that he really mismanaged the company back then, and then also talked about what he has done today in order to make it run smoothly.
From 98 through 01, we sold more than we could deliver, and people got pissed. And that was right about the time when the internet really kind of got going, and the chat boards got going, and I got the big head and the big ego, and we're on the cover of magazines, and screw you internet guys, you don't know anything, and blah blah blah. And so it was kind of an imperfect storm, and I got a beat down. I also took on a partner, Don Goldman, who's between Don and Dave. They run the day-to-day. They make sure the cars get delivered. They make sure that the bills get paid, the taxes get paid. In magazines, in videos, in Autoblog or Jalopnik or Smoking Tire or whatever. And I don't know, it irritates them or bothers them, and they think that because somebody dredged up something from 10 or 12 years ago, like it happened yesterday or last week, Well, I don't hide from the fact that I mismanaged my business, didn't run it right, but now I got guys like, Ralph Lauren's got your dad, got his back and running the operation. Now I've got my partner Don Goldman and my general manager Dave Golder and a whole army of people that make sure that business gets taken care of. So
as you said, he talked about John Goldman, who was at the time, CEO of the company. However, now, if you look into it, John Goldman is no longer with the company, and they're actually in a legal battle, John Hennessy and John Goldman. So I think we really have some big ego issues here, possibly with John Hennessy, and he doesn't really like anyone taking control of the company. So you may say, if there's such a crappy, crooked company, and I hate to say crooked company because I have nothing against any of the employees at Hennessy at all. I think, if anything, all of this blame lays on John Hennessy himself. And according to all the stories from all the ex-employees and stuff, that's what it seems the case is. Obviously, they have plenty of competent mechanics and engineers that work at Hennessy, as shown by the car, by the Venom that they made, which is based on the Elise. Even if you argue that it's not a production car, everyone has to admit it is a very impressive feat of engineering for a car to be that fast in general. So obviously they have an awesome team of mechanics and technicians there. I have no doubt in my mind that they can actually make a really fast car. It's just bad management practices and really, really bad customer service. But how does a company that has had such bad customer service and bad mismanagement over the entire 30 years of its life pretty much survive and become such a big name after all this time? Well, one big thing that I've noticed over my whole life is I've always been real obsessed with car magazines, and Hennessy's cars have always been really predominant in the car magazines. What I mean by that is he takes his best cars that he builds and he sends them to all of the auto journalists in all the magazines. And no fault to these journalists, but obviously they're not going to speak out against this company that is providing them with some awesome cars that not only drive good, but I mean, like, for example, the Venom is SEO gold, like 1270 horsepower Lotus Elise modified LS motor. Like, obviously you wouldn't want to speak out against this guy if he's going to give you cars like this to drive because it's beneficial for your company. What makes him different from all the other tuners is like he's naming these cars these awesome names. Like his tuned Ford Raptor is called the Velociraptor. He's got the Chevy Camaro competitor to the Demon called the Exorcist. I mean, he just is really good at taking it and turning it sort of into a media thing. Versus while other tuners will just say, oh, I put turbos onto a Camaro, he goes, oh, this is the HPE 700 or whatever. He's naming these cars and he's sort of making them into their own models, which is good for media, I guess. So you could sort of say that he's got the car media like in his pocket, but I don't know, I really don't put any blame on those guys. A lot of people I've seen are upset at car journalists and stuff for sort of letting him get by with all that stuff. In their eyes, he has done them no wrong, and they don't really have the evidence to see if he actually is a crook or a fraud. I guess that brings us to today. Where are they at now? Now there's not a whole ton of issues coming out of them as of right now. The last I could really find a lot of information about was in 2016. However, there are complaints obviously on like the BBB from 2017 and stuff, so there are obviously some issues still within the company that need resolved. They've got the new Venom F5, which is their first standalone car that is supposed to be testing next year. As of right now, they've been showboating it around at all the car shows around the world, and all it is so far is just like a rolling chassis, just a body that they made out of clay and then laid their carbon fiber over and painted or whatever, and then a couple of crappy 3D modelings of it, 3D renderings of it driving through the mountains and stuff, but they don't actually have a real functioning car yet. However, I actually have a little bit of faith in that car, just seeing what they did with the original Venom. I think that they might be able to put out some crazy numbers with this Venom F5. So I really like to see Hennessy turn their shit around and really become like a reputable company again. John Hennessy seems like he's a really bad businessman, and he really is just more there about wanting to go fast. So he really needs to hire some people that can take care of his customers better for him. Maybe that means just going to producing supercars like the Venom F5 and not modifying other cars, even though obviously that's how they make all their money right now. I don't know, because I didn't really find any information of people being upset with their Hennessy Venoms. Now there is a little bit of controversy that's stirred up about their tuner school, which is like an intro to tuning in cars, I guess, class that they put on at Hennessy's facility for about $15,000 for, I believe, a 4-month course, but I won't even get into that. That's a whole nother story, I think, right now. So yeah, hopefully they can turn their shit around and actually sort of clean up their name a bit. So obviously this is all just public information. I found it all online. I'll put the sources in the description below if you want to go check it out for yourselves. But let me know what you think. Have you heard of Hennessy being like a sketchy company or a fraud or whatever? Have you never heard of that? What do you think now, hearing all of this evidence and stuff? I don't know, I think it's a pretty interesting story, and I'd really like to see Hennessy turn their stuff around and sort of figure out what they need to do. That's gonna be the end of the video. This is the first video you've seen from me. This is totally out of the ordinary for me, so go check out my other stuff if you want to. Like, I mostly make build videos, that sort of thing. Yeah, make sure to like, subscribe, dislike if you're a big Hennessy fan or whatever. But really, that is gonna be it for me today, guys. I think, honestly, I wanna end on the fact that I think the biggest issue is that John Hennessy just doesn't know that the Ford Focus ST is a front-wheel drive car. I'll see you guys later.
That was about, at the rear wheels, that was about 27 horsepower and about 40 foot-pounds of torque. Picked up about 13 horsepower at the rear wheels. 13 horsepower at the rear wheels. 13 horsepower at the rear wheels.